Today, I want to talk about Robert Browning's famous poem, My Last Duchess, which was first published in 1842 in dramatic lyrics. 1842 was the year when Tennyson's Ulysses was also published. Like several of his dramatic monologues and longer narrative poems, Browning set My Last Duchess in Renaissance Italy. The background is Renaissance Italy, and although his speaker, the Duke of Ferrara, is not an artist himself, he is a patron of arts. He likes to patronize artists like several other people from noble families in the Renaissance period. The poem is set in the Italian town Ferrara. During the Renaissance period, the Renaissance also was a time when some elite and wealthy families served as patrons of artists, supporting their families, their favorites' artistic endeavors. It suggests that some patrons just wanted to seem cool and influential by supporting artists, but actually they didn't appreciate their art. Our Duke is such a person. He patronizes various artists' families, it appears from whatever he speaks in the monologue, and he keeps some works of art in his galleries. He has a gallery in his palace. Let's talk about the setting in detail. This is the finest dramatic monologue by Robert Browning. The speaker is the Duke of Ferrara. Ferrara was an important city during Renaissance in Italy. It was an important cultural center during that period. In this dramatic monologue, the poet has captured the very spirit of Renaissance period, Renaissance Italy particularly, its intrigues, its sensuality, false pride, greed, and cultural and artistic activities in the country. In the poem, the Duke of Ferrara uses a painting of his former wife. Duke's wife was known as Duchess, so he uses the painting of his former wife, his Duchess, as a conversation piece. The only speaker is the Duke of Ferrara. The listener who offstage asks about the smile on the face of the last Duchess in the portrait is silent throughout the poem. The listener is the emissary of a count. Emissary, you can call a messenger from the neighboring count. He has come to the Duke's palace to negotiate a marriage proposal between the Count's daughter and the Duke. The time is probably the Italian Renaissance, I told you earlier in the same video. The location is the Duke's palace. Probably the upper floor, because there is a mention that let's go downstairs, people are waiting downstairs, so on and so forth. Since the Duke points to the nearby art objects in the poem. Browning's most of the monologues begin suddenly, abruptly, and they evolve from a critical situation. They begin from a critical situation, and then the other things unfold to the readers when the speaker, goes on speaking about himself. Browning's monologues grow out of some critical situation in the life of the principal figures. As we see in my last ride together, the grammarian's funeral, Andrea del Sarto, many others. Placed in such situations, the chief figures indulge in self-analysis. And in this way, they reveal not only their own characters, but the characters of others also. Like in this monologue, when the Count, the Duke, speaks about the Duchess, he also reveals his own personality. In the present monologue, we can study the character of the Duke and of his last Duchess and of the messenger. The Duke is a powerful, proud and hard-hearted Italian Duke of the 16th century Italy. He has been widowed recently, as we come to know when he speaks about his last Duchess, what happened to her, etc., etc. So we come to know that he has become a widower. He intends to marry a second time. A messenger of a powerful count comes to the Duke's palace to negotiate with him the marriage of the Count's daughter. The Duke takes him around his picture gallery and shows him the portrait of his last Duchess. And in this way, he tells the emissary what he expects from the new Duchess, what he expects from the father of the Duchess. The Duke talks about the artistic beauty of the picture. He points out at the picture that that is my last Duchess. So he points out to that picture and says that his last Duchess had a very childish and foolish nature. She was pleased with trifles, with trivial things, which she was not expected to do. And would thank others even for the slightest services they happened to render to her. Slightest services. Somebody served her a glass of milk, somebody offered her a flower, and she was very happy and she expressed her pleasure. As a matter of fact, she had no discrimination and no sense of dignity. The Duke expected better sense from his wife. The people from the royal families, did not get happy or did not show their pleasure or pain so easily as the last Duchess did. But the Duke did not point out this shortcoming in his wife, because to notice such frivolity would have meant loss of dignity. So he did not show his displeasure at this behavior, and he did not like to suffer this loss. He did not want to lose his dignity. But he gave orders, and then all smiles stopped together. Probably the poor innocent Duchess was murdered at the command of her brutal and stone-hearted husband. So the false pride of the Duke has been revealed in this monologue. He is proud of his royal family, his family lineage, his status, and the Duchess was a simple, cheerful lady, and he did not like this thing in her. Now let's talk about the characterization in this monologue. The tyranny, the pride, and the dictatorial attitude of the Duke have been thrown into sharp relief by contrast with the genteel nature of the Duchess. Through the Duke, the poem takes a subtle jab at the snobbery of the upper class. People of that period, Renaissance Italy, suggesting the shallowness of the elitist society that gives respect based on things like having a good family name or owning a fancy artwork. So there are so many artistic pieces, carvings, paintings, everything. The Duchess was a cheerful, charming, frank-hearted girl with zest for life. She thanked everybody. She used to walk in the terrace. She did not have any kind of inhibitions. But all her expressions of delight, all her expressions of innocence, uncorrupted by the ways of the world, received only a cold reception at the hands of her husband. Her husband did not like this kind of behavior of the Duchess, his wife. Critics have read into the portrait an autobiographical significance. Some critics believe that even Browning's wife, the poet who has written this poem, his wife was also a cheerful woman, whereas Browning was a strict husband. And particularly Browning, but Browning's wife's father, Browning's father-in-law, was a strict person. Particularly, Browning was a different kind of person, but an autobiographical note from Browning's wife's home's side. And her father did not like the cheerfulness of the daughter. The daughter got suffocated in that kind of atmosphere. Now let's talk about diction and style in this poem. So the diction of the monologue is terse and epigrammatic. The phrase "all smiles stabbed together" speaks million words. It's a concentrated expression of a whole life's tragedy. Everybody's tragedy, everybody's life's tragedy. The poem is written in heroic couplet, but at the same time, the sense doesn't stop at the end, but runs on from one line to another, so we don't get the impression that it is heroic couplet. The reader is not conscious of the rhyme.